Howdy do. So today I'll be showing you guys how to create a virtual machine on Microsoft's Azure platform. So first of all, what is the cloud? That's pretty much what we're going to be doing here. The cloud is pretty much the example of putting something somewhere else on someone else's property. So if we're talking about something like infrastructure, something like a virtual machine actually classifies as infrastructure that would just normally be on premises. And if you were to go and create that from scratch in the cloud or upload it to the cloud, now it's infrastructure as a service, which is a form of cloud. Software, normally that would be installed in your machine or it would be installed in your company's server. And if you were to go and run that in the cloud, it's installed in the cloud. You just access it via some remote means like the internet. That's software as a service. And when you get platforms as a service, which is one of the ones I'm going to have to show you practically for it to make more sense, but an example would probably be Active Directory in Azure, or as Microsoft calls it, Azure Active Directory. So the fact that you are putting something somewhere else on someone else's property and it's being rendered back to you as a service, that generally makes it a form of cloud, one way or another. If something is running on one of your servers, even if you're accessing it remotely or one of your company servers, that's not really cloud. But if you're accessing it on someone else's server, that someone else could be next door, that someone else could be halfway across the globe, that is going to be considered cloud. So I've just landed here on the default Azure page. It wasn't always like this. I think they added this page maybe about a year or two ago. So something you guys are gonna have to keep in mind is if you're gonna be playing with Azure, you're gonna have to be playing with it quite often because it very rapidly changes. And that's just because of demand and because of how quickly cloud is moving at this point in time. And it's not just limited to this platform that I'm talking about. At the moment, I'm using Microsoft's Azure platform, but it's not limited to just Microsoft. Pretty much all the forms of cloud are moving at extremely fast pace at this point in time. So whatever you see in this little video of mine is probably going to be outdated by the time you watch it. So if you're going to watch this in about 3 months, you should be okay. If you're going to watch this in 6 months or 12 months from now, then you're going to have to basically request a new video. I'm going to have to go and remake it because where you find certain buttons and where you find certain components will probably not be the same place. They tend to move them around a bit. So if I go here on the left hand side, this is effectively what we call the navigation pane. I think it used to be called the hub if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to go here to the dashboard. Here we go. So there's the dashboard. At the moment, there's nothing going on this Hyper-V. Okay, well, I'm saying Hyper-V because I'm confusing this with an on-premises virtual environment. So Hyper-V is the technology that you use on premises for virtual machines, at least from a Microsoft side of things. So yeah, this is a blank dashboard. At the moment, I've got absolutely nothing on this Azure platform. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this navigation pane. I'm looking for the component called virtual machines. So what we see here in this navigation pane, that's absolutely not what the Azure platform was limited to. I think this is probably a matter of what people need to access most commonly. This is probably what Microsoft went and added here. So I think this is probably what people access most commonly. If you would like to access more services, you're going to have to go here to all services or create a resource, and you're going to find very big lists there. And even so, you're still not going to see everything. The lists are just too big of what you can actually go do in Azure environment. So I'm going to go ahead and click here on the one that says virtual machine on the left hand side. There we go. So as you guys probably know by now, normally we would have these things called virtual machines on premises. They are exactly like a real computer, except they don't actually have their own resources. In other words, they don't have their own RAM, they don't have their own CPU, and they don't have their own hard drive storage. So they need to get it from somewhere. So the host which they're running on, they share it with the host. So if these virtual machines would normally be running on your computer, your laptop, your desktop, or your company server, it will be utilizing some of its resources, some of that host's resources. So you obviously need to have a lot of resources on that host to be able to run virtual machines. Now, if I'm going to be doing it on the Azure platform, it's the same principle, except it's not utilizing my resources. It's utilizing resources on Microsoft's ends, on Microsoft servers. So there's lots of pros and cons, mostly just pros in my opinion. Whether you're using this Azure platform or using something like AWS or another platform, for the most part, there is just pros when you put stuff in the cloud. I think it's more of a matter of just trying to get it into the cloud. But once you get there, it's going to be mostly beneficial to you and your company. So I'm going to go ahead and add a blank virtual machine. It doesn't have to be a blank virtual machine. If you've got existing virtual machines on premises, you can go and upload them. So if they were Hyper-V virtual machines, that's Microsoft virtual machines, you just go and upload the VHD file. That's the file format. If it's a VHDX file, which is generally considered for generation 2 virtual machines, you need to go and convert it. So there's PowerShell scripts you can go and run. You can go run a search for them on the internet. So very easy PowerShell scripts you can go and run that's going to convert it from VHDX to VHD. So it has to be in a VHD format for you to go and upload an existing hard drive. It has to be in a static format. So if it's a dynamically expanding hard drive, it will not work. It has to be static. And it has to be below a certain size. I'm not entirely sure about the size because I know Microsoft's continuously changing this. At some point it was 1 terabyte, then it was 2 terabytes, then 3. I think the last time I checked it was 6 terabytes. It would not surprise me if it's bigger than that now. So 6 terabytes is quite a large chunk of size. So if you would for some reason go and download the VHD hard drive, which is currently on Azure, to on premises, that is something you can go and do. I don't know why people would go and do something like that. But if you for some reason need to go and do that, you can, but you need to keep in mind the hard drive is in a static format. So if it's currently 2 terabytes on the Azure platform, it's going to occupy 2 terabytes on your server. So you need to make sure you've got that kind of space. So it's going to be unlikely that you're going to be downloading it to a normal desktop computer. It's probably going to be a server environment where you've got a lot of space. So I'm going to go here to add. You can either go there, add, or at the bottom in the middle where it says create a virtual machine. It's really your choice. Let's click on virtual machine, give it a moment. Sometimes the website's a little bit laggy, but it does not mean your components in the cloud will be laggy. That I've seen is entirely different. So you sometimes need to click on it more than once.
A few moments later.
Okay, there we go, guys. So this is what it looks like when you click on add a virtual machine or create a virtual machine. For some reason, mine took forever to actually open. Normally, the longest I've waited is like 1 minute. Normally, it opens instantaneously. So I don't know if that was an internet issue or what the situation was there. So at the moment, I've got absolutely nothing on this Azure environment of mine. So subscription wise, I'm using a trial. You get many kinds of trials you can go and use. So you can go to Google and go and Bing or whatever you want to go and use search engine wise and just go on a search for Azure trial. It's normally 3 days. You get many kinds, but the most common kind is the 3-day trial, which gives you, I think the last time I checked, it was $200. Now, in your currency, it will convert it to your currency, so you're not necessarily going to get dollars unless you're running this in America, I think. But it doesn't go and exactly convert it to your country's currency. So if the dollar ratio to your country is maybe you're supposed to get 400 in whatever your currency is, you might not get exactly 400. You might get slightly more or slightly less. It's just more or less spitball. They're shooting out of the hip, so to speak. So whichever runs out first, either your 30 days runs out first or the money runs out first. So whichever runs out first, the account will then be suspended. So they will not go and delete your stuff. You don't have to stress about any of that. I've seen they normally suspend it, and I think it used to be about 30 days. So now you've got about 7 days. So if you feel like, okay, you know what, this is not for me, it doesn't work for me, it doesn't work for my company, or it doesn't meet my requirements, then you can just leave it be. And after 7 days, they will go and delete it automatically. So you just leave it. If you feel like, okay, you know what, I like this solution, or it meets my requirements, it meets my needs, then you've got 7 days to go and get yourself an actual subscription. So either or, you've got 7 days. If there's something you would like to keep, let's say you decide, okay, you know what, I don't want Azure, but there is something I've done on Azure that I would like to keep, then obviously within the 7 days, you've got to go and back it up. Otherwise, you're going to lose that. Um, it's not like one of those other subscriptions I've seen out there on the internet where after 30 days you automatically start getting billed. No, none of that. So they do require a credit card on the 30-day trial, but I've used my own credit card and I can vouch for it. You can go read up on this and you can go and verify it yourself if you want to. They will not bill you. They literally just suspend your account. And after 30 days, you've got 7 days to go and choose a subscription. Otherwise, it'll be deleted. So that is something. The only thing that they've mentioned, that I've never actually seen it, is they mentioned somewhere along the line, I don't know where I've seen this, somewhere on Microsoft website, they mentioned you may or may not see a $1 charge to your credit card. And they immediately give it back to you. It's just to verify that the credit card is actually legit. And I've never seen that. Obviously, it'll be in your currency, but I've never actually seen that on my statement. So I think it's either so damn quick, or I don't know if they actually still do that. Don't know. But if you see something very weird and it goes back immediately like that, it's probably that. So the first thing we need here is a resource group. Now, about 2 to 3 years ago, there wasn't just resource groups. There was either just classic, or you had a choice between classic and resource group. Now, classic, everything, if you chose classic back then, everything would be stored in its own little location in the cloud, basically. It's not the end of the world, but it becomes quite difficult when you need to go and manage those things. If someone were to go and ask you, hey, how much are all of these virtual machines costing me a month? So you're going to have to go and check each and every one of them individually. That's one thing. So now you can go and group them all together. So it's kind of like Active Directory on premises, if you guys are familiar with Active Directory, where you get to group people or departments or computers together. It makes management easier. Whatever your intention is to go and manage it for, it just makes management easier. So for now, I'm going to call this VMRG. You can call it whatever you want. I'm calling it VM for virtual machine and RG for resource group. So all the virtual machines I'm going to be making, I'm going to put them in this virtual machine resource group. But if I was going to go and make a lot of virtual machines, I can go and make, let's call it virtual machine group 1, virtual machine group 2, and 3. And each of these could have been a different branch. You could maybe label these resource groups according to branch office. And every time you create a virtual machine for a specific branch office, you just throw it into that specific resource group. So that's another way, so at the end of the day, it's just to go and organize your things. So there we go. I've got a resource group now. In the beginning, you have to make one because, like I said, I've got none at the moment. Did I click on save there? I'm not sure if I did. I love this feature in Azure where they automatically give you a green tick if the value is accepted. Now, I was pretty much guaranteed to get a green tick here because this is just a name. But sometimes when you're busy with something for the first time or you've never worked with that specific thing, it's quite handy when you get the green tick or the exclamation mark. Now, the exclamation mark, if you do that, obviously means you've got the value wrong. You can generally just hover your mouse cursor over the exclamation mark and it'll actually tell you what you're doing wrong and what you need to do to fix it, which is amazing for if you don't have any IT experience or you've just never worked with that specific component. Very useful in my opinion. And so I can pretty much call this virtual machine whatever I want. I think I'm going to call it test just because this is a demonstration. Or I can call it the same as the channel's name. So let's call it BurningIceTech, the same as the channel's name. Here we go. Region. Now, at the moment, I'm going to be limited to East US because I'm using a trial. Now, for what I've seen is the trial is generally limited to East US. That's one of the limitations of the trial. For the most part, I can do quite a lot of things on the trial subscription, but it doesn't really allow me to choose other regions, I've noticed. So that's fine. I mean, it's not like it's my money. This is kind of like Monopoly money. If you guys know Monopoly money, it's fake money for the time being. So I'm going to be fine with East US. But in real life, you need to go and check which region you want to go into. It really depends on which country. Now, I could go and make something up and tell you guys, hey, East US is the best one. Not necessarily. It depends on where you are. Because for you, the East US might be very far away. And for the next guy, it might be very close, digitally speaking. So we're talking about latency here. So in my country, East US is quite far away. So that is latency wise, that's going to be quite slow. We don't want latency. So yeah, it's up to you. I would go and check latency, check which one is the closest to your country. And I've seen sometimes there's a price difference as well. So go and check the prices. There's sometimes a slight price difference between these centers. These are data centers. In other words, you're basically choosing where in the world, which data center do I want to use for this specific component. In this case, we're talking about a virtual machine. So where in the world do you want to put this component of yours? In this case, a virtual machine. In this case, I'm going to say East US because I don't really have a choice. Okay, so high availability options and all of that. I'm not going to choose any of that. This is just to show you guys how to create a virtual machine. In real life, especially if you're going to be creating a virtual machine that's a server, I highly encourage you guys to use some sort of high availability. Now, yes, if your stuff is in the cloud, Microsoft gives you a 99.9% uptime guarantee, which is quite a lot. If I do the math quickly in my head, I think that equals to between 4 and 8 hours downtime per year. But something to keep in mind, remember, these guys are still running physical servers. It's not your physical servers, but physical servers are physical servers nonetheless, which means they can fail. A RAM chip might need to be replaced. Maybe they need to go upgrade the operating system or migrate. Luckily, all of that falls away. It's not your problem anymore per se, but if and when that needs to happen, when they need to go and upgrade the operating system or upgrade something or fix or replace something, that server might potentially be down for a few minutes. And if it's down and your stuff is all running on that one server on their side, that's not nice for you, for your business. You could potentially experience downtime. It's not going to be a lot, but we don't want downtime. So I highly encourage you guys to use high availability if you can afford to do so. Image wise, what kind of image do we want to install? So for now, I think I'm going to go with default server 2012. It really doesn't matter. I suppose I could have gone 2016, 2019 here as well. So potato, potato. This is just to show you to create a virtual machine. So I really don't care what virtual machine I'm choosing here. Size wise, now remember we are using the cloud. So when you're using software as a service, infrastructure as a service, or platforms as a service, you're always going to relinquish some level of control. Depending on which one of those three you choose, that's going to determine how much control you relinquish. So we're using currently here infrastructure as a service. We don't relinquish all control. But if you were to go and use something like platforms as a service, in my opinion, that relinquishes quite a lot of control. So size-wise, I don't get to choose the exact RAM and CPU and hard drive space, but I do get to choose something at least. So they haven't taken this away from me completely. So to a certain extent, I can go and choose the hard requirements, RAM, the amount of hard drives I want, the speeds. So this shows me what it's going to cost me per month. As you can see, at the moment I'm doing this in a country called South Africa. So this is what it's going to cost me per month in my country's currency. Yours will obviously be different depending on which country you're watching this from. The fact that they're saying per month, I'm going to make an assumption and say that's when it runs 24/7. That's what it's going to cost you in your currency. So with these virtual machines, you get to turn them off if you want to. Now, I don't know why we'd want to turn them off because it's probably going to be a server. And generally speaking, servers are running 24/7. But if you are not using something on Azure, you do have the ability to go and turn it off. At least with quite a lot of components, you can do that. And if you turn it off, you don't pay for it. So that's something you would normally have to pay for on premises. On premises, you'd have to physically pay for it either way. Whether the server is running or not, you paid for that server. You paid for the hardware. Now, if it's in the cloud, if it's not being utilized, you don't pay for it. So the more you use, the more you pay. The less you use, the less you pay. So yeah, that's one of the benefits you get with cloud is you only pay for what you use. If you don't use something, you don't pay for that something. Easy peasy. So I'm going to leave it on the default values for now. Okay, username. I'm going to make it, well, since you guys are students, let's make it student. Um, there was a time I used to make this administrator, and then for a few months or a year or so, Microsoft didn't allow administrator. They said it's a clash or conflict, it's not allowed. And then they allowed again, and then they didn't allow it again, and then they allowed it again. So they keep changing it. So that's why I'm not using the word administrator here. Otherwise, you guys might get comfortable with that. And then maybe in a month from now or 2 months from now, when you watch this video, it might no longer work because Microsoft went and changed it again. I've never had an issue with that word. So go use the word student. Although if you're not a student, if you're doing this in an actual work environment, you might want to go and give it a proper name. Your name or someone's name. Give it a proper name. But be careful of the word administrator here. It sometimes goes and blocks it. Password wise, it has to be 12 characters. There was a long time we would go use 8 characters with these virtual machines. And I think about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Microsoft changed this. It has to be 12 characters now. For everything else on the Azure platform, I've seen for the most part you can use 8 characters. But with virtual machines, it has to be a 12 character password. Just give me a moment. It has to be uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols. I'm sure you guys have heard about that drill. It's very annoying. This is also something that got added afterwards. Initially, when I started playing with Azure many moons ago, they didn't have this. And then one day when they started adding this, I was like, what the heck is this now? So yeah, the way you create virtual machines also looked completely different back then. So this is kind of like a mini firewall, so to speak. I'm not talking about the Windows firewall, which you're going to get on the virtual machine. This is a mini firewall for this specific virtual machine. It's not for all the virtual machines. It's specifically for this virtual machine. It works with ports and stuff like that, where you can go and choose what ports are allowed and what not. So a while back, I think in the beginning of 2020 or at the end of 2019, they had this list, but all of them were unticked. So I normally had to tell people that please remember to go and at the very least tick this block if you intend on actually connecting to this virtual machine remotely. RDP is for remote desktop, and the port 3389 is obviously remote desktops protocol. If you intend on opening something like a web browser on this virtual machine and you want to browse the web, you're probably going to have to open 80 and maybe even 443 if you intend on browsing secure pages. So it really depends. So for now, I'm going to, hell, I might as well open them all. That's not something I suggest you do. And you might be wondering, but where's all the other port numbers? Because you're only seeing 4 here. They are there. It's just in an initial configuration for the virtual machine, you only find these 4 that you can go and tick. So later on, once the virtual machine has been configured, you can always go and change things afterwards or add things afterwards. And that includes this firewalls of the ports. You can go and add or remove any ports there. There's quite a lot that you can go and add. So I'm going to leave it on that. You can see it even gives me a warning. It says, hey, watch out. This stuff is open. So that's not something I would recommend you do in real life because it's unsecure. I basically left all the doors open to the server. License wise, I'm just using a trial here, so it should be fine. And something I've noticed is if you create your very first virtual machine, is it normally forces you to have a diagnostic storage account. So that is something you're going to have to find here way at the top under the management tab. So disk is obviously where you can go and add hard drives, make new hard drives. Networking is where you can go and configure the networking for your virtual machine. I'll add that afterwards. I don't have one right now. So if I had what we call a virtual switch, that's what we call it on Hyper-V. I think in the cloud here on Azure's platform, we call it a virtual network. So those virtual networks is what we use to go and connect our virtual machines to one another or components to one another in the cloud, just like you would connect things on premises to one another. So that's a different video I'll show you guys about how to go and do things on the Azure platform. I'll be making more than one. So if you would like to see those, please subscribe down below and then you can get these updates. Otherwise, you will not know when these videos are coming out. So in the videos that's going to be coming out, I'm going to be showing you guys how to go about the virtual networking, how to go about SQL, how to go about, quite a lot of things. Maybe a few websites you can go and create on the Azure platform. If there's something specific you would like to see on the Azure environment, please drop me a comment below and let me know what you would like to see that I can go ahead and show you that. So yes, if you have an existing virtual network, you can go and choose it from here. At the moment, I've got none, so this thing is going to go and generate kind of like a generic one at the moment. So these virtual networks can effectively be used to connect your infrastructure, which is in the cloud now, to even infrastructure that's on premises. And the people on premises, for the most part, would not even be the wiser. They would not know that this is actually in the cloud. They don't need to know. Only the technicians need to know. You can be using the same infrastructure to go and connect things that's or components that's in different data centers to one another. However, you need to keep in mind if they're on different data centers, it's not a matter of just connecting them to one another. You're gonna have to go and set up also a VPN of some sort. So something we'll discuss in the next video. For now, I'm gonna go to the management tab, and it's probably gonna be blank. I'm just gonna go and throw in a diagnostic storage account here. I can see it already has one, and that's all I need for now. I'm gonna add a hard drive afterwards. Review and create. Let's just see if it gives me any issues. I don't think it should. Give it a moment. Normally doesn't take this long. I don't know if it's the website or what. There's been times I would go and create certain components on the website and it would just be slow with Azure portal. The components themselves obviously run differently, so they are generally fast, but the website or the portal you use to access them is sometimes a little bit laggy. So there we go. In my currency, it shows me that's what's going to cost me. In my currency, it's going to cost about 2.85 in my currency per hour. I don't think that's entirely accurate. So first of all, this is not in your currency per se, so you need to go and compare it to your currency. Secondly, I did not choose all of the bells and the whistles. So whatever value you guys see here when you're busy creating your virtual machine, keep in mind, in my side, I did not choose all the bells and the whistles. So that's probably going to be slightly higher. And it also does not include the traffic that's going to go back and forth between the virtual machine and on the site. So it also does not include that. That's built separately. But even though this thing is not 100% accurate, it still is going to be really, really cheaper compared to running things on premises. On premises, you would have to go and buy physical servers. I don't know if you guys have checked the recent prices for servers. They are already insane. You're probably going to have spare parts lying around, if something fails, or you're going to have some sort of SLA agreement with some sort of party that will come and replace something for you. And there's licensing obviously involved. Every 3 to 5 years, you need to go and upgrade these servers, physically and software wise. These companies obviously push them longer than that, but generally after 3 to 5 years is when the average company will go and replace these servers. Sometimes they'll sell them, for cheap to the staff itself internally. Otherwise, they'll just go and dispose of it. So yeah, then you're gonna have to have a physical server room. There's the electricity, obviously, that you will not believe how much electricity these servers consume. Let me just click on create here. So the amount of electricity these servers consume is enormous. Then you're going to have air cons. Air cons, there's normally about 2 or 3 of them, at least in the average server room I've seen, and they're normally set to minimum. Those also consume a very large amount of power. So that's also something you guys are going to have to keep in mind is the air cons, the electricity for the air cons, the server room, the electricity for the servers. maybe the technicians is going to have to keep an eye on it, the spare parts, the SLA agreements. The list just goes on and on and on as to how many things there's going to be that's actually going to cost you money in the day. So as soon as you start moving things to the cloud, and once you get to that point in time, you can notice your costs is going to go down quite a lot. I would not say all of it's going to fall away, but it is going to go down quite a lot. Now, I've seen there is times when things in the cloud actually do cost you more. It really depends on how you do it or what you intend on actually putting into the cloud. An example of this would probably be Active Directory. Now, Active Directory you can put in the cloud now, and there's a lot of companies that have done that. But that's one of the things from experience I've seen at this point in time, which companies do not completely put just in the cloud. Now, there's obviously exceptions to this rule, but for the most part, most companies have one on premises as well as an Active Directory in the cloud, and these two are synchronized. And you might be wondering, okay, so why don't they just move it to the cloud completely? It's because the cloud has a few things that the one on premises doesn't have. That's why they're using the one that's in the cloud. But there's also a few things the one in the cloud does not have, which the one on premises have, and that is things like group policies. Almost all companies use something called group policies, and the one in the cloud currently does not have group policies. So that's a bit of a pickle, if I can say the least. So yeah, if you do want group policies, you're gonna have to keep the one on premises. The one in the cloud obviously gives you benefits like having the ability to join a domain from anywhere in the world. You can log in from anywhere in the world, create an account from anywhere in the world. There's a lot of benefits, I mean, that is effectively where we are going in the future at this point in time. I can see in the notification section here, the virtual machine is done. It says it's succeeded. So I'm just gonna go ahead here and click on virtual machines just to show you guys that it's actually done. Here we go. It says running BurningIce Virtual Machine. If you were to have gone and clicked on virtual machines while it was busy creating, it would pop up, but maybe not immediately. Maybe within the first 30 seconds, there would be blank. And if you refresh this page after 30 seconds, you would actually see the virtual machine, but it would say creating. And if you just keep waiting, you'd actually see the status change to running. So if I click on that component, you can see at the moment I'm under what we call virtual machines. And if I were to go and click on that, it's going to open that specific virtual machine. So everything I'm going to see after that is going to be for that specific virtual machine, not for the other ones. Not that I've got any other ones here. I'm going to go click there. There we go. So this is what Microsoft refers to as a blade. So it's kind of like on Microsoft's operating systems, when you go into a folder, when you can go into a subfolder and a subfolder and so on and so forth. It's the same situation. So these are effectively tabs. And if I were to go and click on a certain tab, you'll find sometimes, not always, it opens an additional blade. And that blade will also have a bunch of tabs. And if I click on one of those tabs, it'll open another tab and then another tab, so these are blades. Sometimes you can be 10 blades or 20 blades deep. So then there's a little scroll bar here at the bottom you can actually use to scroll back to a specific blade instead of having to go back way to the dashboard. We don't always want to do that. So at the moment, virtual machine is running. You can see it says they're running. I'm currently on the overview tab, and if I would like to, I can go here to disks, and I can go and add storage. That's something I'll show you guys in the next videos. I can go and add additional storage. I can go and add networking afterwards, something I'll show also in a different video. So all of these can be done afterwards. So you can see under networking, it does give a small indication here as to some of the ports that's been allowed. Now that's not where it used to be, so I don't know if they went and changed it again. So there used to be a different place where we would go and add this. So I think it used to be called something security, if I'm not mistaken. So now it seems they've moved it again. So this is actually a perfect example of what Microsoft goes and does. They keep continuously moving things. For the most part, it's for the better. It's just a bit of a hassle to get used to the new view. That's actually all it is. Alright, so here's overview. And if I were to go and click on connect now, let's just click on RDP. Remember, I did allow the port RDP. It's going to want to download the file now to my computer. So depending on what browser you're using, it's going to pop up. So download RDP. You can see at the bottom left, there's the RDP file. And it's remote desktop, except I'm connecting to a machine in the cloud. Now there it shows me the public IP address of this virtual machine. So that's what you're going to need if you're going to want to allow this to connect through a firewall that's on premises or something. So why did I make this? I think I made the username student with my 12-character password, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so that's normal. It shows it's working. Just click on yes. And now the server will start up for the first time. And there at the top, you can also see the public IP address for this virtual machine. Now, yes, you are probably going to be configuring that public IP past firewalls and all that kinds of things. Something you need to keep in mind is when you turn this virtual machine off, if you should ever do that, It's going to ask you, do you want to keep that IP or not? Now, I did not always do that in the past. It really depended on how you turn off these virtual machines in the past and all this Azure platform. So depending on whether you actually went onto the virtual machine like I am right now and clicked on the old start button here and clicked on shutdown here, or did you go and right click on a virtual machine from the Azure portal and just click on shutdown there? Depending on which one of those ones you chose, or which method of those two you chose, that would have determined whether it kept the public IP or did not keep the public IP. Now it doesn't really matter. If you go to the portal and you try and shut down a virtual machine from there, it's going to ask you, do you want to keep this IP? Now, normally from what I've seen, if you turn the virtual machine off and you do not keep the IP, there's pretty much no costs involved. It doesn't cost you a cent for the most part from what I've seen. But if you were to go and say keep the IP, there might be a small reservation fee. It's not a lot, and considering how much hassle it's going to save you, how much headache it's going to save you, it might be worth it to keep the IP. I personally recommend keeping the IP. Reserve that IP for yourself. And so it looks like it's more or less started up. For the most part, I'm not going to show you this. This is normal server stuff. It's got nothing to do with Azure. I just want to show you guys that I can log into the virtual machine. So if I close that, there we go. I want to disconnect. And I'm going to try and shut this down from the portal just to show you guys the message. If I go here to overview, you can see it looks very much like Hyper-V on premises if you guys have ever seen Hyper-V. And yes, you can upload virtual machines which are not Hyper-V. There's just additional conversions you need to go and do in case that's what you guys are wondering. So if I were to shut this down from here, notice this pops up now. I think this is the first time I've seen this is in January 2020. So this came out in the year 2020. It wasn't around in 2019 in December when I was still doing this. So now it asks me, do I want to keep that public IP? And you can obviously go and say yes or no. Don't keep it. There's a little tick box here. So yeah, I'm just going to cancel this. Stop the virtual machine. And yeah, if you guys have found this virtual machine video informative and you like it, please give me a like and smash that subscribe button, and then you guys will be getting updates about the next videos coming up. A lot of them are going to be about Azure platform, Office 365, but they're not going to be limited to that. It's going to be about anything in IT pretty much. If there's something specific you would like to see, like I said earlier, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I will not know. I can't smell what you guys want. You guys need to tell me what you want, and I'll make videos about it, obviously. See you guys next time, and thanks for watching.